Hey guys, this is Miss Britt here. I am going to be reading a story to you today called Mirette on the High Wire by Emily Arnold McCauley. But as we are reading this story, we are going to be thinking about the elements of fiction stories because this is a fiction story. And this particular story, like most fiction stories, is told in chronological structure, which means that it is a sequence of events that unfold over time, including a beginning, middle, and end. So today, your job is going to be to talk about the elements or the parts of a fiction story. Now, those of you that just finished up second grade, you are used to doing beginning, middle, and end. And I'm going to try and make the document to where it is easier for you to kind of stick with that. But my students who finished up third grade and who are going into fourth grade, you are going to be focusing on the actual parts, the story element parts. So you're going to tell me, who are the characters. You are going to tell me what the setting is, what the problem is when it is identified. And then this word is one that I know that you learned in third grade, but it may be one that you have trouble remembering because every year when fourth grade starts, my fourth graders always have trouble remembering the word plot. The plot are the events that are happening in the story that move the story along, such as the development of the characters, like how the characters are developing over time, what things are happening to the characters that are changing the characters or having some kind of impact on them, and the elaboration of the problem. So what is the problem? And the problem doesn't have to be, like a serious issue. It could just be some tension, like something's going on in the story and this is where it would go. And then lastly, you have the end, which is where the problem is resolved. And there we go. Where the problem is resolved, the conclusion of the action, and sometimes it identifies the theme. So if there's a lesson for you to be learned, then this is where it would happen, okay? So you guys are going to be, I wanted to review those with you, but you are going to be filling out a document that's going to look like this. Now, this is an example. This is an example based on the book, A Day's Work by Eve Bunting. Your copy is going to be blank. It will have these 5 words on the side, and you are going to tell me who the characters are. So I want you to be specific. Don't just tell me a little boy or a little girl or, use their names. Francisco in this story was a young boy eager to earn money. He speaks English. You don't have to tell me what language they speak, but a young boy eager to earn money, something, give me something. The grandfather or the abuelo, which was a hardworking Spanish speaker. I don't expect all of these words. And then Ben. So you can just tell me, like in this story, who are the main characters in this story? And then the setting, this is very important. Be specific. I want to know, do not tell me outside. Do not tell me in the winter. Tell me specifically if a location is named, provide that location. Also, remember to capitalize the names of places. Los Angeles is a city, so you have to capitalize it just like you have to capitalize Wilmington because it is a city. And then California is the state. So if it was happening in Wilmington, North Carolina, then you would capitalize Wilmington and you would capitalize North Carolina. You could also say that the story was set in recent times. I'm going to go ahead and tell you that this story was not set in recent times. The setting was long ago. So you can tell me how many years ago because it does tell you in the story how many years ago. The plot. So this is where it's always tricky for kids. You're going to tell me, remember, when we think about the plot, we're going to think about the events that move the story along, the development of the characters, or you're going to elaborate on whatever the problem is a little bit. So In this story, Francisco and his grandfather needed work. Since they needed work, Francisco decided to tell a lie to get them work removing weeds from a garden. Well, it's great that he got them work, but he did it by not being honest. So that is the problem. But the conflict here is the conflict is like it is also the problem, but it's like, what is the internal conflict here? Francisco lied. He caused the job to be done incorrectly. His lie was exposed to Ben and his abuelo, which is his grandfather. So what happened to the character is he chose to tell a lie, but because he chose to tell a lie, the work was done incorrectly and he was exposed to Ben and his abuelo. And then the resolution is just the ending. Let me zoom out, I guess. The resolution is just going to be the ending or how it is resolved. So in this particular story, the abuelo or the grandfather insists that the work be done right. He promises that he and Francisco will return the next day to fix their mistake. He insists that they will make good on their word. So this is, how it was resolved, but it's also teaching a very good lesson to Francisco because his abuelo is teaching him, no, we do not do things that way. We do them correctly. He also, the grandfather, makes a promise that he and Francisco will return the next day to fix their mistake. So he is again teaching Francisco that if you do something incorrectly, then you're going to have to come back and fix it. And then he insists that they will make good on their word. So in this story, the theme or what you could learn from it is you need to always, 1, be honest with people. 2, if someone is expecting you to do a job, you need to do it and do it to the best of your ability. And if you make mistakes, then you need to be willing to fix them. All right, so let's get started on Mirette on the High Wire. 100 years ago in Paris, when theaters and music halls drew traveling players from all over the world, the best place to stay was at the Widow Gâteau's, a boarding house on English Street. Acrobats, jugglers, actors, and mimes from as far away as Moscow and New York reclined on the widow's feather mattresses and devoured her kidney stews. Devoured means they ate it up. Now, there are a lot of places mentioned on this very first page. So where is this story taking place? What is the setting? Right, Paris. And in case you do not know, Paris is in France. So for your setting, you could say the setting is Paris, France with a capital P and a capital F. And then you can also say that this story takes place 100 years ago. Okay, so that is your setting. And already we have a lot of characters mentioned, but one that may be important is the widow Gâteau, and that would be this lady right here, the widow. And a widow is a woman who has lost her husband. Her husband has passed away. Madame Gâteau worked hard to make her guests comfortable, and so did her daughter, Mirette. The girl was an expert at washing linens, chopping leeks, paring potatoes, and mopping floors. She was a good listener, too. Nothing pleased her more than to overhear the vagabond players tell of their adventures in this town and that along the road. One evening, a tall, sad-faced stranger arrived. He told Madame Gâteau he was Bellini, a retired high-wire walker. "I am here for a rest," he said. "I have just the room for you, Monsieur Bellini, in the back, where it's quiet," she said. "But it's on the ground floor with no view." "Perfect," said the stranger. "I will take my meals alone." That means I will eat by myself. So this is the daughter, Mirette. The next afternoon, when Mirette came for the sheets, There was the stranger crossing the courtyard on air. Mirette was enchanted. Of all the things a person could do, this must be the most magical. Her feet tingled as if they wanted to jump up on the wire beside Bellini. So here she is to collect the linens. That means to get the laundry in. And here is Mr. Bellini walking on a tightrope in the courtyard. Mirette worked up the courage to speak. "Excuse me, Monsieur Bellini. I want to learn to do that," she cried. Bellini sighed. "That would not be a good idea," he said. "Once you start, your feet are never happy again on the ground." "Oh, please teach me," Mirette begged. "My feet are already unhappy on the ground." But he shook his head. Mirette watched him every day. He would slide his feet onto the wire, cast his eyes ahead, and cross without ever looking down, as if in a trance. So we've got a lot of characters so far, but the ones who seem to be most important so far are Mirette. And since the title says Mirette on the high wire, I would say that she is going to be very valuable. So I would, say who Mirette is. So put her name, spell it correctly with a capital M. And then I would also say a little bit about her. She's the daughter of the widow. She, helps around the boarding house. And then I would also put Mr. Bellini on there and make sure that you spell his name with a capital B. There it is at the very top, if you can see that, the capital B. And then say who he is or what he's known for in the book. Finally, she could not resist any longer. When Bellini was gone, she jumped up on the wire to try it herself. Her arms flailed like windmills. In a moment, she was back on the ground. Bellini made it look so easy. Surely she could do it if she kept trying. Then in 10 tries, she balanced on one foot for a few seconds. In a day, she managed 3 steps without wavering. That means falling. Finally, after a week of many, many falls, she walked the length of the wire. She couldn't wait to show Bellini. So I don't know what we could learn from this story, but maybe something about perseverance. We'll have to keep reading. But she started, she failed, she kept trying, and eventually made it across. So that would be a character trait for her. She is showing perseverance, which could be something you would learn from a character like her. He was silent for a long time. Then he said, "In the beginning, everyone falls. Most give up, but you kept trying. Perhaps you have a talent as well." "Oh, thank you," said Mirette. She got up 2 hours earlier every day to finish her chores before the sun shone in the courtyard. The rest of the day was for lessons and practice. Bellini was a strict master. That means teacher. "Never let your eyes stray," he told her day after day. "Think only of the wire and of crossing to the end." So make sure that you keep focused. When she could cross dozens of times without falling, he taught her the wire walker's salute. Then she turned to run, to lie down, and to turn a somersault. "I will never, ever fall again," Mirette shouted. "Do not boast," Bellini said so sharply that Mirette lost her balance and had to jump down. Do not boast. That means do not brag. Do not say things like, "I will never, ever fall again," because you just might, and you don't want to be the person who says, "I'm never going to do that," because we all can have bad days. One night, an agent from Astley's Hippodrome in London rented a room. He noticed Bellini on his way to dinner. "What a shock to see him here," he exclaimed. "See who?" asked a mime. "Why, the great Bellini. You didn't know he was in the room at the back? Bellini, the one who crossed Niagara Falls on a 1,000-foot wire in 10 minutes? Asked the mime. And on the way back, stopped in the middle to cook an omelet on the stove full of live coals? Then he opened a bottle of champagne and toasted the crowd, the agent recalled. My uncle used to talk about that, said the juggler. Bellini crossed the Alps with baskets tied to his feet, fired a cannon over the bull ring in Barcelona, walked a flaming wire wearing a blindfold in Naples. The man had the nerves of an iceberg, the agent said. This is trying to say that he had nerves that weren't shaken, very easily. So he didn't get very nervous very easily. He could do things like this. Mirette raced to Bellini's room. "Is it true?" she cried. "You did all of those things? Why didn't you tell me? I want to do them too. I want to go with you." "I can't take you," said Bellini. "But why not?" asked Mirette. Bellini hesitated a long time. "Because I am afraid," he said at last. Mirette was astonished or surprised. "Afraid," she said, "but why?" "Once you have fear on the wire, it never leaves," Bellini said. "But you must make it leave," Mirette insisted. "I cannot," said Bellini. Mirette turned and ran to the kitchen as tears sprang to her eyes. She had felt such joy on the wire. Now Bellini's fear was like a cloud casting its black shadow on all she had learned from him. So she was upset, and she felt like because, he had that fear that it was casting doubt or a black shadow on everything that she had learned, because how could she love something so much and enjoy it so much and then know someone who was so skilled at it who now had a fear of it? Bellini paced his room for hours. It was terrible to disappoint Mirette. By dawn, he knew that if he didn't face his fear at last, he could not face Mirette. He knew what he must do. The question was, could he succeed? Could he do it? That night, when the agent returned, Bellini was waiting for him. The agent listened to Bellini's plan with mounting excitement. "I'll take care of it," he promised. To himself, he added, "A big crowd will make me a tidy profit. What luck! I just happened to be in Paris now." Bellini went out to find a length of hemp with a steel core. He borrowed a winch and worked until daylight securing the wire. So hemp is a type of rope, but it has to have a steel core because it has to be able to hold his weight. And then he borrowed a winch, which is something that takes rope or wire and it cranks it and pulls it tight, so it kind of reels it in. He worked until daylight, securing the wire. The next evening, Mirette heard the commotion in the street, so she heard all the noise in the street. "Go and see what it is," her mother said. "Maybe it will cheer you up." In the square was a hubbub. The crowd was so thick she couldn't see, at first, that the agent was aiming a spotlight at the sky. "Return of the great Bellini," he was yelling. Could it be? Mirette's heart hammered in her chest. Here she is, and she has spotted him. Bellini stepped out onto the wire and saluted the crowd. He took a step and then froze. The crowd cheered wildly, but something was wrong. Mirette knew at once what it was. For a moment, she was frozen as Bellini was. Then she threw herself at the door behind her, ran inside, up flight after flight of stairs, and out through the skylight to the roof. So he was on the opposite side, and she ran up all the stairs to get on the roof to meet him on the other side. She stretched her hands to Bellini. He smiled and began to walk toward her. She stepped onto the wire, and with the most intense pleasure, as she had always imagined it would be, she started to cross the sky. "Bravo! Bravo! Bravo! Bravo!" roared the crowd. "Protégé of the great Bellini," shouted the agent. He was beside himself, already planning the world tour of Bellini and Mirette. As for the master and his pupil, they were thinking only of the wire and of crossing to the end, which, if you remember, was the lesson that he was teaching her in the beginning. Mirette and Bellini, stupendous feats, wire walkers.